how can you go about supporting other women in your organization?
Can I do this?
Go ahead.
What you have to keep encouraging each other. You have to remind that person that it's going to get better, and it will get better. And what you're trying to do is build your knowledge base. And this is something a lot of people don't do. You build your resume, you build your experience, you encourage them, don't give up. Have conversations with them to hold them up, help them see things another way or a better way. And it really makes a difference. It really does. A lot of times women won't give up because they will see the hope. They will know that they are being successful. You know, when you're put in a position where you're always being challenged daily, it's just like when you go to school and you get a homework assignment. You read that assignment and you give it your best shot. Hold each other up. Be supportive. Don't go to the side and have a sidebar conversation about someone's inadequacies. We all have them. We all fall short. Let's lift each other up.
Okay. Now, in this scenario, you have the power. You have the power to stop gender bias. You can do this. How would you go about stopping gender bias? And this is for anybody. If you don't answer, I'm gonna voluntold you. I'm gonna volunteer you. Michelle, I'm sorry, Michelle.
Kevin, I honestly think that it has to start with an individual, meaning it has to start with me, it has to start with another person. It's all has to be that level. I think that there's a lot of internalized concepts of how we're supposed to behave and think and fit, operate in a society as women. And then for men to support women also in how they perceive them. So I don't know if I want to really say that, say the word gender bias. It really has to start with an individual. And yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's fine. And Heather, Michael Jackson said, start with the man in the mirror, right? But once you've done that, what if the issue doesn't come from managers or anybody that you can visibly see? Maybe there's a bias at the top. You've done the work that you need to do as the man or the person in the mirror, but how can you reach up to somebody that you may not even see on a regular basis to institute or install that type of change?
Well, I started my own company, so I guess I started there. I think that's a really hard thing. So to go back to Michelle's question and maybe tie it in here, I think that it's really hard for people to change things that they don't understand. When we talk about bias, and especially unconscious bias, the whole premise of that is that we don't know that it's there. There's tiny little things that tell us. I've had situations with friends where I didn't think they were lying to me, but I didn't believe them until I was in the room when it happened. So again, going back to your question for Michelle, I'm actually, if I had the power to change, I think the best way for us to do that is to figuratively flip the switch. So if men could walk in the shoes of a female and experience what we experience, even just for 24 hours, oh boy, I think we'd see some changes.
That would make a great movie. I think it's been done already, but that would be a great story. Amy, in closing, what advice do you have for women looking to grow either your own business or within the company that you work for?
That's a really good question. And I think I want to use that to kind of piggyback off of what Michelle and Heather were just talking about, where particularly if you're in a leadership position or some type of role where you have some kind of influence over your coworkers or communicating with a manager or behavior of another or something like that. I think that, and this is, I'm going to generalize, but it's tough to answer the question. We somewhat by default think that, and I think Reverend Morgan was talking about this, like the capability for a man to kind of be there 24/7, to know that if there is other stuff in their life, in their home, in their family, somebody else will take care of it. The man doesn't have to, so they can dedicate themselves to work. Whereas a woman might not have that flexibility. I think if we all say, she's right, she doesn't have that flexibility. You don't have to look like the man. You don't have to be there 24/7. You working at 10 p.m. after the kids are in bed, fantastic, thumbs up. That's the baseline. That's the way to go. Just to kind of force your brain to think about it a little bit differently and turn it on its head and think this very traditional way that we think about the workforce. Let's completely upheave that and think about the way a woman has to approach her job because she has so many other responsibilities, and set that as the baseline. That's a starting point, because then you're working on yourself, you're working on the individual, you're trying to change your thinking, and that opens you up to a number of different perspectives. So I would say that is where I would recommend starting.
Okay, thank you. And Sonia, as a final thought, how do you balance career, life, and whatever passions you have? And is there really such a thing as balance?
I believe there is. My process is to shut off things. When work is over at 5 p.m., I shut that off. And when family time is in, I dedicate time to that. And then when I have special projects that I'm doing, because I do a lot, I try to find time and schedule it to make sure that I have adjusted the time accordingly, so that I can, well, and then the benefit that I have is that we have no children in the house. Yay. So a lot of that has to do with the fact of winding down in life. But I've always been a person, even when I was younger, there was a time to play, and I did travel and sing a lot. There was a time to travel and sing. There was a time to work, and I knew how to shut those switches off. And that's what you have to do sometimes. If you have to learn how to shut things off. And I think I learned that from my mother. When she would have a rough day at work, she would tell us, look, I need about an hour and then I'll come out. So she'll go in her room for an hour to decompress from the stuff that happened during the course of the day, so that she wouldn't push it off on us in the house.
I think that is interesting. And thank you for that, by the way. I think it's interesting that some women that I have done workshops with feel that they can't turn their job off. They are on call 24/7. They have to, work 12 hours a day. And then, they got to deal with the house, the husband, the kids, the cooking, the cleaning, and the job is always on. And I think that's very interesting that they don't find a way. They don't realize that, as you said, some things you need to flip the switch and turn it off for a period of time. Karen.
Yes.
What advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders?
Cool.
One thing.
Don't bend.
Don't bend.
Don't give in.
Don't
know
give
who
in.
you are. Be sure of who you are. Acknowledge what you can and cannot do.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Reverend Morgan, this is a question that we often have in Toastmasters for table topics, but I'm going to give it to you. If you could look at the 25-year-old Morgan Dixon what advice would you have for yourself, knowing what you know now?
Oh, wow. I think about that a lot. I really, I would say to block out other opinions, to stay true to who I am, to that own self be true. Because I think verbally I thought I was not letting those other opinions and outside opinions sway me, but in hindsight, looking back, I definitely was very. I moved in a way that was worried about how it would appear, what other people might think, and that only ended up hurting myself both personally and professionally.
Okay, thank you. And Michelle, as a final thought, I'm going to ask for 60 seconds to 90 seconds. What are ways that women can develop their leadership skills? I know there's a lot of ways, and we're Toastmasters and all that good stuff, but tell me one good way that women can develop their leadership skills.
Wow, that's a great question. Okay, so I know you mentioned Toastmasters, and obviously Toastmasters is about leadership, so it's a great way for people to join the nonprofit to develop leadership skills. I think many of us can attest to that, so I'm not going to get into too much in depth about that. I mean, it's a worldwide club, and you get to practice so many levels of leadership and in a safe environment. So even if you make mistakes, you still get to grow and go out back into the corporate world or entrepreneur world and do better when you're in your field. So, I mean, that is a really wonderful way to grow your leadership. But I also think that leadership also comes with self-care and understanding yourself better, really having strong awareness of how you think, how you feel, and make sure to take care of yourself, because that's the foundation that you build upon everything that you do, your health, your career, your family. So really, I think that's where it starts, and you keep on build upon that.
Okay, great answer. Thank you. And Heather, I think I have a final thought or question for you. And that is, do you feel that different sectors of business have greater diversity or women in leadership? And why do you think that is? Do you think that different business sectors have greater gender diversity or women in leadership? And why do you think that is?
So my answer is definitely yes. Why do I think that is? I think there's a lot of reasons. I think it comes down to a lot of things that we've been talking about. So if you think about the customer service world, if you've got a customer service job, that is a more nurturing environment, and therefore it's going to be female dominated, right? So your leadership is probably going to be female. If you have a daycare center, a business where you're in childcare, again, nurturing environment. We've talked about tech. Unfortunately, that type of field is, the idea is that it is male dominated. Same with construction. So I think the reason why is because we are still so deeply rooted in sexism and what gender belongs in what position. And as we move forward, hopefully we'll see those get meshed up a lot more, but it's definitely the case currently.
Okay. Thank you for that great answer. Well, that's about all, y'all, for this segment of Diverse Talking Head podcast. I want to thank our guests, Michelle, Heather, and Sonia, Karen, Amy, and Morgan. Thank you so much for being on the panelists this evening. And it's always important that we take 2 steps to the rear and get on out of here. Until the next episode of Diverse Talking Head podcast, exit stage left.